In this video, we're going to take a look at solving equations. We're going to start with some very simple equations, and they'll get a little more complex as we go through the video. The best way for you to use this video is to pause the video when we have a slide up that shows the equations. Write down the equations and try to work those out on your own. Then start the video up again and see how you did. It always looks easy when you're just watching someone solve an equation, but when you have to do it on your own, it's a little more complicated. So that's how I would recommend that you use this video. The first two equations we're going to look at are 8x equals 24 and negative 77 equals 7x. Now let's solve these two. Okay, when we solve these two equations, we only need to use one property, and that's the division property of equality. We have 8x equals 24. Remember, the equal sign divides our equation into two sides. And whatever we do to one side, we have to do the same exact operation to the other side. We have 8 times x. We don't want 8 times x. When we solve an equation, we're trying to end up with 1x equals a number. So we want to get 1x out of this, so we divide by 8. And I draw my fraction bar to show division, and I divide by 8. But if I do that on the left side, I have to also divide the right side by 8. 8x divided by 8 gives me 1x. 24 divided by 8 gives me 3. My solution is x equals 3. The second equation is negative 77 equals 7x. Notice the x is on the right side. That's okay. If we say x equals 3, and we turn that around and say 3 equals x, that's two equivalent ways of saying that x is equal to 3. So over here, we don't have to move the x around. We've got 7 times x. We want 1x, so we divide by 7. Whatever we do on the right side, we have to do the same operation on the left side. Again, I draw my fraction bar to show division. 7x divided by 7 gives me 1x. Negative 77 divided by 7 gives me negative 11. Be careful with your signs. Alright, so those are our first two equations that are only using the division property of equality. Okay, the next equation we're going to solve is 10 minus x equals 12. Okay, in this next equation we're going to use both the addition property of equality and the division property of equality to solve this equation. We look at both sides. Remember, the equal sign divides the equation into two sides. On the left side we have 10 minus x. We can't combine those in any way. They're not like terms. One's a constant, one's a variable. On the right side we simply have the constant 12. There's nothing we can do to simplify that either. So we think about what we want to try to do in this equation. We want to get the x by itself. So we need to move this constant to the other side. It's positive 10. We can subtract 10 to eliminate it on the left side. But if we subtract 10 on the left side, we have to subtract 10 on the right side. So 10 minus 10 gives me 0. I could write 0 minus x, but I don't need to. I can just bring down the minus x. Now that was a subtraction sign, but now it's becoming the coefficient of my x, and it's a negative sign. 12 minus 10 gives me positive 2. Okay, we're not finished because we don't have x equals 2. We have negative x equals 2. And remember, when you have a negative sign in front of a variable, it's the same thing as having negative 1 in front of that variable as a coefficient. So we want to divide by negative 1. Negative 1x divided by negative 1 gives me positive 1x. 2 divided by negative 1 gives me negative 2. So the solution is x is equal to negative 2. If we wanted to check, which is always a good idea if you have time, plug the negative 2 back into the original equation. We would have 10 minus negative 2 equals 12. And we're asking if that's true. Well, 10 minus negative 2 becomes 10 plus positive 2. So yes, 12 equals 12. It works. That is our solution. The next equation we're going to solve is 75 equals negative 10x plus 25. Notice they are getting a little more complex. We're using both properties and we're having some negative signs in there. Okay, this equation is somewhat similar to the last one. We have a negative sign in there and the x is on the right side. Again, we look at it first and say, okay, the left side of our equation is just a constant, 75, nothing we can simplify there. The right side is negative 10x plus 25. Those are not like terms, they can't be simplified at all. The x is on the right hand side, that's the only variable term we have, so we want to leave it there. We want to eliminate this constant or move it to the other side. It's positive 25, so we subtract 25. If we subtract 25 on the right side, we have to subtract 25 on the left side. 25 minus 25 gives me 0. Okay, I'm left with negative 10x on the right side equals 75 minus 25 gives me 50 on the left side. Now, we're not finished because we have negative 10 times x. We want to divide by negative 10. Use the fraction bar to show division. Negative 10x divided by negative 10 gives me 1x. Positive 50 divided by negative 10 gives me negative 5. The solution is negative 5. Okay, this equation is negative 4 plus 46 equals 7 times the sum of negative 3t plus 6. Okay, let's take a look at the equation and look at the two sides the same way we've been doing. This equation is a little more complex, but we're still going to follow the same steps. The equal side divides our equation into two sides. So on the left side we have negative 4 plus 46. Well, that's just an addition problem. Those are two constants. Negative 4 plus 46 gives me positive 42. So I go ahead and simplify that left side. On the right side I have parentheses. What's inside the parentheses is negative 3t plus 6. One's a variable, one's a constant. We can't combine those. We have a 7 on the outside of the parentheses, and we know we can use the distributive property to eliminate those parentheses by distributing that 7 into every term that's on the inside of the parentheses. So we say 7 times negative 3t gives me negative 21t. 7 times plus 6 gives me plus 42. Alright, now we look at what we've got. And we say, okay, we only have one variable term, and that's negative 21t. We want to leave it where it is. We want to get the constants to the other side. We have a plus 42. We're going to subtract 42. If we subtract 42 on the right side, we have to subtract 42 on the left side. So 42 minus 42 gives me 0. We could write negative 21t plus 0, but we know that would still just be negative 21t. On the left side, 42 minus 42 gives me 0. There's nothing else there. So we have to write that 0. Don't freak out. Don't think there's no solution. 42 minus 42 gives me 0. If that's the only thing on the side, you have to write it. Now, we're not quite finished because we've got to divide by the negative 21 because we want to end up with positive 1t. So we always divide by that coefficient of the variable. Negative 21t divided by negative 21 gives me positive t. 0 divided by any number gives me 0. So my solution is t equals 0.